Okay, I say this with the utmost respect because when people are like a profession in their trade, they're somewhat of like they have this mentality of a stickler, like it has to be to the book. And I'm that's not necessarily bad, but it could be too like that could be too condensed. It could be so condensed where you're missing the point of a bigger picture generally. Because whether you're new or old to the human design tradition, and I'm not saying an expert, I myself am an intuitive, and I haven't claimed to be anything in its own irony. But within my intuitive learning, as it already is, going upon something of a human design experiment, whether you're a professional or a beginner, you can't dismiss the fact that it's still an ongoing thing. It's still an ongoing evolution. And it's as it's ongoing, it's also still transformating as well. So whether you're a professional in the human design or new or somewhere in the middle, you can't dismiss the fact that it's always going to be transforming, but not just you the individual within the bigger picture of it. And it's ongoing within the transformation, and and it's subtle pockets of the downtime slopes of when things, when high frequencies have like a particular type of energetic outburst pitch, and then after that expression has its own energetic emission, then there's a downtime. So even though there's things that are transforming, the transformation has its own speed accord and time accord where things move fast and things move slow, and that's subjective to the individual and how the individual's mechanics develop with the experiment at large. And there was another video I did that I'll post very soon on just kind of like, I guess, processing the strategy and the authority, right? Even if and like even if you're like an expert, because like some experts, they have like this like stickler mentality where it's just kind of like it's condensed in a way where it's not like where like they could fool themselves where they think they could know it all, but no one really could really know it all, because there's then what would the point of life be, there's always a process of learning. So within the process of learning, we have to put our knowledge and our learning to the test. That's why life is life, you know because obviously when we feel high and low, those highs and lows, they pass. And as they pass, how they pass is acclimative to how we have acclimated within our soul practice of our life over however we grew up from wherever we came from. So the point of this video is seeing whether we realize it or not, as a quote unquote human design professional or a human design novice or a human design, intermediate, end quote, whether we realize it or not, there's a collective not self. And it's kind of ironic that I'm not even saying I'm any level of the human design. I'm just my own spirit in a human body, pretty much, as the saying goes. I'm not necessarily claiming, any type of like level, even though, but obviously let a balanced assessment eventually, I guess assess me, right? But I'm not too worried about that. I'm just saying it's weird how like I could be the first to say this shit, a bunch of different shit, and like the professionals just didn't have that critical thinking to go through them. But that's not the point. But that's just what it is, though, because I'm just blunt with my truth. Because if I'm not blunt with my truth, I'm like the most. In one intellectual tip, I fool myself the least because I'm blunt with my own shit. So since I fool myself the least, I'm blunt with my own shit. My intelligence is purifying me, so I can purify my inner mentality and my inner mental field and my inner mental intelligence. So that's why I'm blunt for myself. But obviously, I still have to go through life. I still have to like see other people's subjective, quote unquote, not self, end quote. The not self being conditioned illusionary programs accumulated within the body. That's the simplicity of the not self. And to brush off that not self, this the collective accumulated illusionary programs, the self is trying to like brush that off and recognize that and balance that. So because in quote unquote the human design tradition, end quote, you'll hear terms like the not self and the self, but who's to really say any of these selves are not the not self? Some of the selves are still the not self, because that not self, but it's a degrees thing. It's the degrees of the not self. How much illusion are you really entertaining and interplaying within your vessel? How much of that's the simplicity of the not self. How much different accumulation of illusionary programs do you have within yourself? And within yourself, how is that original self trying to balance out, the illusionary programs, be it whatever? So within a bigger collective simplicity of quote unquote human design, end quote, what the professionals don't necessarily recognize or explain most respectively is there's a collective not self that's ongoing. And there's a collective not self that's ongoing. The not self is that which balances and purifies accumulated illusionary programs. The not self is accumulated illusionary programs. The collective not self is accumulated illusionary programs that's in an ongoing process, that even if you are the self, you're still interacting with that, because that's the accumulation of illusionary programs both individually and collectively. So that's what and I say this with the most respects, because that's the ongoing transformation or not, is the nuanced not self going to be transformed like sustainably or not? So that, because like obviously it doesn't matter which level of human design you are, what the experts and the professionals most respectively don't necessarily explain is the collective not self. That program has its own particular effects, influences, and impacts, and that particular influence, effects, and impacts in parallel conjunction with your karma and your dharma, quote unquote, karma and dharma, end quote, energetically speaking, without the illusionary perspectives and, subject projection biases programs per, per what the, per what we're thinking the not self is. What we're actually trying to recognize here is the collective not self. That's the thing that's like the subtle extreme polarity that kind of like is something of like, if that gets left unchecked, that is the thing that creates the distortion in itself. So there's a collective not self creating distortion no matter what, so the program is extreme. The program is deep. It's a deep extreme program. that that's like it's a subtle simplicity that's not necessarily recognized unless it's explained and somehow accumulated by some casual miracle. So I'm saying that particularly because we have to understand how, like, there's a program and then there's a higher program that recognizes an illusionary program, a not self program, because we could do all the like I'm only bringing up this point of the collective not self is because we have to ask, why is life the way it is? That's why I'm bringing up this insight. I'm bringing up this insight, and let me check the battery because it's like 9%. Wow, the great 9, huh? So it's like so all the aspects within the I Ching gates in acclamation to human design, the gates, they have a shadow, but the shadow of the gates, it's different from the not self of the gates, because the shadow of the gates, it's just the light of the gate and the dark of the gate, pretty much. Like the gate casts a light, and then the I Ching gates, the 64 gates in the human design, in correlation to the human design, the gate casts the light of insight. That insight is a code, a metaphysical code within the human body, and that metaphysical code somehow is correlated to like your house system within your body, and that code of light, it's expressed as a genetic code, and when you go to sleep it recharges, and as it recharges, the light and the dark of the I Ching gate of the human vessel, if that's used in an improper way, that's the not self. The gate, the light and the dark of the gate being used in an improper way, that creates the distortion. Like a confused illusionary approach to the light and the dark of the gate, it creates the not self of the gate. So the I Ching gates, they themselves have the light and the dark of their own emanation already. And just, contemplate the human design system. I'm an intuitive. I'm not saying like I'm an expert. I'm not saying like you have to be an expert. We all have to start somewhere. So it's like like we have to balance the arrogance too, because like I see all the like, okay, my phone's acting up. Like I see the so I got a window screen that just popped up. So this is my secondary phone these days. So I'm only saying this because why is life the way it is? Because collectively the human inhabitants, they're voting for confusion and illusion, and they're working and creating stuff as they're working with confusion and illusion to create a particular type of distortion. So even if you're a quote unquote professional HD practitioner, end quote, you still have to recognize there's a collective not self that we all have to work through, even if we're a professional with using our strategy and authority and understanding the program. We still have to recognize the collective not self to understand why life is the way it is. Because if we don't reciprocate with the balanced energy, then we could be susceptible to like unnecessary, like quote unquote suffering, end quote. And we don't have to be with unnecessary suffering, but we don't necessarily even know that that's like its own like, metaphysical concept. Like if we don't like, and I don't want to like say it like that, like the reason why we don't reciprocate with balanced energy is the reason why we're susceptible to unnecessary suffering. So we're esoterically voting for that, whether we know that or not, whether we have the clarity to know that or not. So if we don't like reciprocate with the balanced energy, we're susceptible to inviting unnecessary suffering. So why but this, because over the lifetimes recently of the last 2,000 years, we've accumulated confusion, ignorance, quote unquote distortion, end quote. And now it's like we don't have to like invite unnecessary suffering, but we do, because we have like this toxic, detrimental, quote unquote ego, end quote, that could invite that. So it takes like supreme clarity and insight to really overcome this. So this is a short one because my phone's acting kind of strange. So this is like, why is life the way it is, and what like, and then the collective not self, what HD practitioners don't talk about. So this is a short one. I'm probably gonna go on my other phone. Thanks.